Imagine a SpaceX capsule, right? Just screaming through the upper atmosphere at thousands of miles an hour. It's generating this fiery plasma trail before violently splashing down in the ocean. And now, imagine popping the hatch on that capsule. Inside, sitting literally right next to each other, you find a piece of a bioprinted human organ and, well, a dirty separator pump from a space toilet.
Yeah, it's quite the visual. And on the surface, it definitely sounds like someone packed the cargo hold completely backward.
Right. But today, we're actually going to explain why both of those objects, I mean, the medical miracle and the plumbing hardware, why they are equally critical to saving your life.
This is Better Side of the World, where we find good news from around the world. Introducing your favorite AI hosts, Delta and Tide.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking you on a mission to the absolute bleeding edge of discovery. We're going to uncover how pushing our physical boundaries, specifically through space-based medical and material research, is directly improving life for you back down here on Earth.
Yeah, and we will also be exploring how an upcoming pretty massive lunar infrastructure project is going to basically turbocharge those scientific leaps. And then, we're going to crash right back down to Earth to see how exploring our own planet continues to reveal these incredible hidden survivors in places we thought we'd already mapped out completely.
We have a really phenomenal stack of sources to guide us today. We are pulling technical data from a June 16th, 2026 NASA report, and that details that exact SpaceX Dragon splashdown. We've also got this fascinating June 15th space.com article breaking down a company called Astrobotic and their, frankly, massive new lunar lander.
Which is a really big deal.
Oh, absolutely. And then just to prove that Earth still has plenty of secrets, we have a wild New York Post report about a literal ghost animal that just reappeared on a Mexican island after 20 years.
It's crazy. Space exploration and terrestrial conservation just colliding in a single news cycle. I mean, it really highlights how much we are learning all at once.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking through these sources, to me, this deep dive feels like we are opening a time capsule of the future. I mean, we're looking at things that sound like pure science fiction, but they're happening this very week, right alongside the sudden rediscovery of biological mysteries we thought belonged exclusively to the past.
Right.
So let's start with what literally just fell out of that frontier and splashed into the Pacific.
Yeah, the SpaceX Dragon. So this was an unpiloted spacecraft, specifically the 34th SpaceX commercial resupply mission. And it was returning from the International Space Station. It actually hit the water off the coast of California near Oceanside at 5:11 a.m. Pacific time on June 16th.
And the payload manifest on this capsule is it's unbelievable. I mean, it brought back biological samples that are going to directly impact how we approach healthcare. The NASA report highlights bioprinted organ and cartilage tissue, as well as DNA-inspired materials engineered to develop these highly targeted new cancer treatments.
What's fascinating here is the underlying mechanism of this research, because, you have to ask, why do we bother going 250 miles straight up to print a piece of cartilage?
Right. Like, why not just do it in a lab down the street?
Exactly. But the International Space Station, it isn't just an observation deck for astronauts to look at the stars anymore. It is this highly specialized offshore laboratory where microgravity allows researchers to conduct medical breakthroughs that, well, they simply violate the laws of physics under Earth's gravity.
Okay, break that down for us because, printing a 3D organ sounds complicated enough in a totally normal lab.
Oh, yeah. Well, think about the physical structure of a human organ. I mean, it's mostly soft tissue, water, and incredibly delicate cells, right? So if you try to 3D print or grow complex, thick organ tissues in a lab in, say, Boston or Tokyo, gravity is just relentlessly pulling those soft materials down.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they turn into a puddle. They literally collapse under their own weight unless you build these artificial rigid scaffolds to hold them up. But the problem is the scaffolding changes how the cells interact with each other.
So the gravity is basically crushing the experiment before it even starts?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But in the microgravity of the ISS, that downward crushing force is virtually gone. So the cells can just be suspended. They naturally self-assemble into complex three-dimensional structures that mimic actual human biology just, far more accurately.
Wow. Okay. And that brings us to the DNA-inspired materials for cancer treatments that were mentioned in the report.
Yeah, and the exact same physics apply there too. When you don't have gravity pulling, like the heavy molecules to the bottom of a test tube, polymers and DNA structures can crystallize perfectly. They form these perfect, uninterrupted 3D lattices.
And what do we use those lattices for?
Well, those perfect structures are basically the key to developing highly targeted drug delivery systems. So we are building microscopic drug delivery vehicles in space that are structurally impossible to manufacture down here on Earth.
Okay. I am totally tracking with you on the tissues and the cancer drugs. That is the glamorous, life-saving science. But I have to push back here on the rest of this manifest.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the NASA report notes they brought back technical data on cryogenic fuel storage, which, fine, it's a rocket, that makes sense. But then they brought back an ocular imaging device for checking eyes, an absorbent bed that filters trace cabin air contaminants, and, like I mentioned at the start, a separator pump from the waste compartment.
The toilet pump.
Yeah, the toilet pump.
Yeah.
So why go through the astronomical effort and cost to bring back a dirty air filter and a toilet pump?
I know the hardware sounds entirely mundane until you look at what extreme isolation does to the human body and, honestly, to our engineering standards. Let's take the ocular imaging device first. When an astronaut spends months in space, their vision often significantly degrades, like noticeably.
Wait, really? Why? Is like the cosmic radiation or something?
No, it's actually the fluid mechanics of the human body.
Fluid mechanics.
Yeah.
Silver.
Down here, gravity is constantly pulling your blood and bodily fluids down toward your legs, right? Your cardiovascular system evolved to pump really hard against that downward force. So when you suddenly remove gravity, all that fluid just pools up in the head and torso.
Oh, man.
And it literally physically squishes the back of the eyeballs and compresses the optic nerve.
Oh, wow. So their own bodily fluids are flattening their eyes from the inside out. That sounds awful.
It is, and it's a massive problem for long-duration spaceflight. So to monitor that degradation, we are forced to develop incredibly sensitive, highly advanced, miniaturized diagnostic imaging tools.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. By studying how eyes fail in space, the diagnostic technology we have to invent inevitably ends up in your local optometrist's office. It ends up catching glaucoma or retinal issues years earlier than older machines ever could.
That is fascinating. Okay, and the air filter and the waste pump, I imagine that comes down to, like, survival engineering?
Absolutely. Absolute constraints breed absolute efficiency. I mean, when you are trapped in a sealed metal tube traveling 5 miles a second, you can't exactly crack a window to let in fresh air.
Yeah, or run a pipe out to a sewer.
Exactly. You have to study the absolute most efficient way to scrub trace contaminants from recycled air, and you have to reclaim every single drop of water.
Yeah.
The level of engineering required to keep that air filter working perfectly up there that drives the creation of the commercial air purification systems that are used in modern hospital surgical wards and increasingly even in our own homes.
Wow. So the ISS is basically serving as this incredible offshore lab driving Earth-saving medical research. But there's a bottleneck, right? I mean, a space station is only so big.
Very true.
So if we want to scale up these discoveries, if we actually want to manufacture these perfect DNA lattices or print organs on a meaningful scale, we need a permanent, heavy-duty research base. We need serious off-planet infrastructure. Which I think brings us to the moon.
Yes. The moon is the logical transition point for sustained, scaled-up scientific discovery.
Yeah.
And, that transition isn't theoretical anymore. It is literal hardware sitting in a clean room right now.
Yeah, according to our space.com source, on June 15th, 2026, a company called Astrobotic unveiled the Griffin 1 lunar lander. And this is part of NASA's Moon Base 2 mission, which operates under the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program, supporting the broader Artemis initiative. That's a lot of acronyms.
It is a lot of jargon. Let's translate
Yeah.
some of that, because the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Program, or CLPS,
Yeah.
it's a fundamental shift in how we explore space.
Yeah.
Well, instead of NASA designing, building, and flying every single piece of equipment themselves, like they did back in the Apollo days, they are essentially hiring private space delivery trucks to drop off their gear. And Astrobotic is running one of those delivery trucks.
And this particular truck is an absolute monster. I mean, it is launching in late 2026 on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket. The Griffin 1 is nearly 15 feet wide and is designed to carry a 1,377-pound payload down to the lunar surface.
Which is huge.
It is. To put that in perspective, Astrobotic previously launched a smaller lander called Peregrine back in January 2024. That one was only about 6 feet tall, and unfortunately, it suffered a propellant leak and burned up in Earth's atmosphere. So the Griffin 1 is just a massive leap forward in scale.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, Griffin 1 is what the aerospace industry calls an infrastructure class lander. It fundamentally changes the mission parameters.
Meaning it's not just an experiment anymore.
Right. This is no longer about sending two guys up to plant a flag, hit a golf ball, and collect some rocks. It is about delivering the literal roads, the sensors, and the heavy equipment that future astronauts are going to need to conduct long-term, sustained scientific research.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. When I look at the payload manifest for Griffin 1, I don't see a spaceship. I see heavy yellow construction equipment arriving at a barren, empty dirt lot.
That's a great way to look at it.
Because before humanity can build the high-tech, space-based medical labs of tomorrow, the ones we just talked about that will cure diseases and print organs, we first have to pour the foundation. We have to survey the land.
And the equipment it's carrying fits that analogy perfectly.
It really does. I mean, it's delivering the Landcam X from the European Space Agency. That is basically the high-tech surveying equipment mapping the potholes and craters in real time so future larger landers don't crash.
Yep.
And then it is carrying the F-Flip rover from a company called Astrolab. That rover is the Scout, driving around checking the soil mechanics. And there's the Beacon Cube rover, which acts as a mobile communications relay. So Griffin 1 is basically doing the dirty, unglamorous site prep so the fancy hospitals and factories can be built later.
Exactly. It's laying the physical groundwork, but it is also carrying something much more symbolic.
Yeah.
Because among all that heavy machinery, it's carrying 10 cultural payloads from 6 different nations.
Ah, the time capsules.
Yes.
It is carrying messages collected from Japanese children. There's a moonbox capsule filled with micro SD cards from people all over the world. And honestly, my personal favorite, a payload from a group called Nanofiche. They are sending up the Galactic Library to preserve humanity, which is a miniaturized, indestructible repository of human literature, art, and knowledge.
It's wild, right? And I think it points to a deep psychological need we have as a species.
What do you mean?
Well, as we push out and build infrastructure in these incredibly hostile, isolated environments, we feel this compelling urge to back up our hard drive.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, we want to preserve our legacy and ensure our knowledge outlasts us, safely stored out there in the vacuum of space.
But, we are going to such extreme multi-billion-dollar lengths to preserve humanity's story on a rock 250,000 miles away. And the bitter irony here is that while we are looking up at the stars to build our galactic library, we are somehow completely blind to the ancient, fragile stories disappearing right here on Earth.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our final source.
It's a very jarring shift, isn't it? Going from the high-tech world of orbital mechanics down to the dirt.
It really is. We are leaving the clean rooms and rocket pads and traveling to Cozumel, which is a popular vacation island off Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. So, according to this report from the New York Post, for over 20 years, the Cozumel dwarf fox was considered a ghost.
Just completely gone.
Yeah, the scientific community believed it was entirely extinct. I mean, the last confirmed sighting of this animal was in 2001. But then, in 2023, a wildlife biologist named Rafael Chacon was driving along a coastal highway and managed to capture a blurry photograph of one.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And it was just recently published and verified in the journal Neotropical Biology and Conservation.
Chacon actually described the moment as feeling almost unreal. And from an evolutionary standpoint, the Cozumel fox is just a marvel. I mean, it is a miniature canine endemic only to this specific island. And they are up to 40% smaller than their mainland gray fox counterparts.
Right. It's that biological mechanism called island dwarfism, isn't it? Because the pygmy raccoon on Cozumel went through the exact same thing.
Yes, exactly. And the mechanics of how island dwarfism works are both brutal and fascinating.
How does that work exactly?
Well, think of an island as a closed loop, much like a space station, actually. There is a very strict calorie budget. So if a species of mainland fox gets stranded on an island, the larger individuals require massive amounts of food just to maintain their body mass.
Right.
When resources get scarce, being big is suddenly a fatal disadvantage. The big ones literally starve.
So the runts of the litter are the ones uniquely equipped to survive.
Precisely. They survive, they reproduce, and over thousands of years, in that isolated, resource-constrained environment, the entire species essentially shrinks to fit the calorie budget of the island.
That is incredible.
It is. But what makes the rediscovery of this miniature fox so shocking is the absolute void of data we had on it. I mean, before Chacon snapped that photograph by the highway, the only physical evidence we had of this animal's existence came from subfossil remains discovered in Mayan archaeological sites.
Wait, bones that were like 500 to 1,500 years old.
Yeah.
We had ancient bones, a 2-decade gap of nothing, and then suddenly one is just standing by the side of a modern road. But the reality for this fox is incredibly grim, right? I mean, the scientific consensus is that the animal is critically endangered, hanging on the absolute brink of extinction. Because it's a popular island, they face severe everyday threats, like just getting run over by tourists in rental cars or predation from invasive feral dogs and cats.
Yeah, and this raises an important question. And it is a point that the study's lead author, Travis Baer from Pathos Wildlife, really hammers home. He points out that the single biggest challenge facing the Cozumel dwarf fox isn't just the feral dogs or the cars. It's our complete lack of data.
Because we don't know anything about them.
We know almost nothing. We don't know its remaining population size, its geographic distribution, its diet, its mating habits.
We are entirely in the dark.
Totally. Bayer states plainly that uncertainty alone is dangerous because it makes effective conservation extremely difficult. And this connects directly back to the overarching theme of our discussion today.
Oh, so?
Knowledge is only powerful when we can map it out and apply it. You cannot engineer a solution for an ecosystem you don't understand, just as you can't build a lunar base without surveying the craters first.
Wow. Yeah, it is a striking, almost painful irony. Because think about what we covered today. We are literally launching a galactic library on the Griffin 1 lander to preserve humanity's collective knowledge on the moon. We are spending vast fortunes to ensure our art and literature survive the vacuum of space.
Yeah.
Yet down here on Earth, we don't even know the population size of a dwarf fox living in the bushes of a global tourist destination. Are we so obsessed with the grandiose mysteries of the cosmos that we are missing the profound, fragile mysteries right at our feet?
It's a very human contradiction, I think. We are captivated by the stars, by the engineering marvels of a SpaceX Dragon capsule falling from orbit, or, an astrobotic lander carrying heavy machinery to another world. We love to build.
Right.
But the biological marvels here on Earth, these intricate, delicate ecosystems forged by millennia of isolation, they're slipping through our fingers simply because they aren't loud. And we just aren't looking closely enough.
So what does this all mean? How do we synthesize the SpaceX splashdown, the moon-based infrastructure, and the ghost fox of Cozumel? I think it comes down to recognizing the immense value of isolated environments.
Absolutely.
Pushing the boundaries of human knowledge requires an obsession with the places that are the hardest to reach, whether that is 250 miles straight up on the ISS, manipulating microgravity to print human tissue without a scaffold,
Right.
or 250,000 miles away, dropping off the bulldozers and surveyors on the moon, or even deep in the humid underbrush of a Mexican island, mapping out the calorie budget of a vanishing predator.
And for you, listening right now, the relevance of these isolated environments is incredibly tangible. Because the space research returning on that SpaceX Dragon, it isn't just abstract science for a textbook. It is the raw data that will directly shape the future of your healthcare.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's the cancer treatments and the diagnostic technology that will eventually find its way into your home. Meanwhile, the miraculous survival of the Cozumel dwarf fox proves that nature is fiercely resilient, provided we actually pay attention, remove the blinders of our own uncertainty, and do the hard work of understanding how these systems function.
We started today by talking about that feeling we sometimes get, the illusion that all the maps have already been drawn and the blank spaces have all been filled in.
Yeah.
But the truth is, the map of discovery is three-dimensional, and we've barely scratched the surface. As we prepare to send perfect DNA-inspired lattices and a highly advanced galactic library up to the lunar surface to preserve our legacy in the stars, it leaves you with a lingering thought.
What's that?
What lost pieces of Earth's own incredible library are quietly waiting in the shadows, ready to be rediscovered in our own backyards? Ultimately, is the greatest value of venturing out into the harsh, unforgiving vacuum of space actually learning how to be better, more observant stewards of the fragile, irreplaceable life right here on Earth?
This has been Better Side of the World. And somewhere tonight, something good is still happening.